Hey everyone, it's Kara, and today I am making my very first soft spoken ASMR video. So I hope that you like this if you're into the talking type of ASMR. Recently, I made a poll on YouTube asking if people prefer the talking or the no talking videos, and a lot of people actually like the talking videos, which kind of surprised me, but I thought, okay, I can try this out and see how it goes. So here we are. I am just redoing, or actually putting narrations over a previous video that I posted, and we'll see how you like this. I do have new videos coming out, and I do plan to do those as no talking, but I will try to take some and put narrations over them just to see how they work out and see how you like them. So just let me know what you think. And I'm doing the sort of soft spoken version. I'm not much of a whisperer. I sound strange to me. To me, I sound strange when I try to whisper. So we're going to try this out first and see how it goes. So do you like the sound of the matches? I think I really like the sound of the crackling of the fire on the match, and I like to have, in all of the videos, I like to have a little bit of a background with some flickering light. I think it just makes it feel really relaxing. So this cake recipe is actually from one of my food websites. I have a couple of baking websites, and this recipe is on one of them. I will put the link in the description if you want to make this for yourself. You can just go to that link and print out the recipe, and then you can just make it for yourself. So I recently started using the bags of flour and sugar for my videos because I really like the sound. The sounds of the crinkling bags are just really nice as compared to these tubs that I use here. So yeah, the tubs are really convenient to store it, but they don't have the best sound for an ASMR video. Oh, okay, so since I'm measuring flour here, I'll just go ahead and tell you that some tips on measuring flour. If you're not a baker, you may not know this, but when you measure flour, if the recipe just says like a cup of flour, or however many cups of flour, if it doesn't say packed, then you don't want to use your measuring cup to scoop the flour. You want to actually use a spoon or something else to add the flour to your measuring cup and then level off the top. Because if you use your measuring cup and you kind of scoop the flour into it, it's actually packing in the flour into your measuring cup, and you're going to add more flour than you really needed to. So that's just a quick tip. So just spoon it in there and then level the top off, and you won't accidentally be adding in more flour than you need, because nobody wants dry cakes and dry cookies or anything else. So that's my tip. Do you use these large, thick ceramic bowls? I love these. They are really nostalgic to me. I like the sound of the wooden spoon scraping against the side of the bowl. It just reminds me of my childhood with my mom. She would use these a lot in baking, so it's just really makes me feel at home. And even though I wrote this recipe myself, I still have to look at it 100 times. I do that every time I'm making something. I'm constantly looking back at the recipe. I don't know if I just feel like I'm going to forget something or if I actually do forget a lot, but I do look at the recipe a lot. I think some of my videos, I've noticed that I go really slow, and at first it was kind of on purpose because I thought I need to go very slow to have it relaxing, and then I had a few people point out that it was too slow, so I thought I would go a little faster. I don't know the proper speed, so you let me know if things are too slow, and I can do things a little faster. Now, when you measure sugar, it's okay to just use the scooping method because it's just sugar. It's not soft like flour. It's not going to pack into the cup. So you can just scoop it if you want. So I always, when I open a new container of baking powder, I always try to write the date on the top so I can remember to replace it within 6 months. And recently, I've just noticed that sometimes I have to replace it even sooner. So I made pancakes the other day, and they just didn't rise. They weren't fluffy. They were kind of dense. And the only thing I can think of is that it was actually the baking powder. So I actually just went ahead and replaced it, even though it was just barely 5 months old. So if you ever have any issues with your cakes rising properly, or you're making pancakes and they don't rise properly, and you know that it's a recipe that you've used before and it works, you know it's probably something like the baking powder, unless you're just baking something at a higher altitude, and then it could be anything at that point. This trick is to make a sour milk mixture, and it's sort of a substitute for buttermilk. Sometimes if you don't have buttermilk, you can use this to do that instead. So you're just adding a little bit of lemon juice, and you can use white vinegar, and mix it in with your milk and just let it sit like that for 5 minutes or so, and it kind of sours your milk. It gives it that sort of tang that buttermilk would have, and it's not exactly the same, but it works in a pinch if you don't have buttermilk. And I almost never have buttermilk. I don't drink it. My dad used to drink buttermilk and eat saltine crackers, and he would put saltine crackers in a large glass of buttermilk and then smash them up in there, or cornbread. He would do that mostly with cornbread. Oh my gosh, it was awful. He would smash up the cornbread and mix it up and then eat it, and then he would just leave the glass on the coffee table. It was just the worst. It was so gross. So I don't drink buttermilk. The only thing I use it for is baking. And you can't really taste buttermilk in baked goods, really. It just kind of makes them more tender. And it just kind of gives more flavor to it, but it certainly doesn't taste like buttermilk, or I wouldn't eat anything that had buttermilk in it. Oh, and I always like to crack my eggs in another bowl first, because even though I have been baking since forever, I still get shells or little pieces of shells when I crack the eggs. Not all the time, but I mean frequent enough to not want to just crack the eggs directly into whatever it is that I'm mixing. So it's much easier to crack them into one bowl and then fish out any of the little shells that you get in there before you add it to everything else. Nobody wants to eat a piece of cake and then chomp down on a piece of shell. My son recently went to Mexico and bought me a huge bottle of Mexican vanilla. That's not what I just used because I didn't have it to make this video, but now I do, and I think I will have enough vanilla to last probably another year and a half or maybe 2 years. It's a large bottle, but I was just happy that he thought about me and got me something that he knew that I would love. I keep looking at the recipe. I look at it a million times. Let me know if you do the same. It doesn't matter if I wrote the recipe or not. I just have to look at it over and over. I really hate messing up recipes. Like, if I didn't look at it, I'm afraid that I'll miss something, and then will have wasted all those ingredients and all that time and everything. I really try to lower the sound when I'm mixing. It's just so loud. So hopefully this works for you. If you don't like to hear the mixer at all, let me know, because I can always, for future videos, cut those sounds completely out if you want. I think the butter wrapping is one of my favorite ASMR sounds. It's just really nice, and it doesn't matter if I'm doing ASMR or not, I always fold it when I'm done. I don't know why. It's just some kind of habit, and I don't know even when it started or why I do it. Maybe I just like the sound, and I just fold up the packaging once I'm done with it. And I'm just adding this melted butter in and mixing it in. I think I actually forgot to put this in earlier, even though I looked at the recipe a gazillion times. Somehow I still missed it, but yeah. I think sometimes I start thinking about other things and I just forget what I'm doing, and I'm like going through the motions and then realize, oh, it's like, when you're driving to work or to a place that you go a lot, and when you get there, you're just like, I don't even remember the entire trip. I think they call it highway hypnosis. That's back in my driver's ed days. I remember that, and I think it's something like that. You're just kind of in this relaxed state or just this zone, and you're not really present in exactly like what you're doing at that moment. So we just made the cake batter, and now we're making I guess you could call it the topping. It's the cinnamon streusel kind of topping. It just goes over, you spoon it over the top of the cake and then use a knife to swirl it all around so it bakes inside of it and makes little moist pockets of like delicious cinnamon goodness. It's really good. So for measuring brown sugar, if you're not a baker, it's a little bit different to measure brown sugar than flour. So you actually, most of the time, unless the recipe tells you not to, most of the time you want to pack the brown sugar into the cup. So you don't want to do that when you measure flour, but most of the time you do whenever you're measuring for brown sugar. I think brown sugar is basically granulated sugar with molasses, I believe, and you can get a different level. So you have the light brown sugar, dark brown sugar. Usually you can use them interchangeably for just based on whatever taste you feel like. I'm not a person who really enjoys eating molasses for anything, but brown sugar I like it just fine. My parents they really liked molasses. It was really strong to me and really thick, but sometimes they would have it on their pancakes. This topping kind of takes a little while to mix up. I just like to use a fork. I notice when I use a whisk to do this, it kind of clogs up the whisk a little bit. So it's kind of a pain to get all of the topping out of the whisk. So I just found that using a fork kind of makes the process a little easier. Just kind of mash everything down with a fork. If you have one of those pastry things, I don't know, it's just not coming to my mind what they're called, but those pastry cutter thingies, that probably would work. I have a little doggy. She's a dachshund, so she's a weenie dog. She's a miniature weenie dog, and she's kind of an old dog, so she's a little bit cranky, and sometimes I feel like you can hear her in the background. I try to keep her away from the kitchen, but she's very alert. That would be the nice way to put it. She's always listening for sounds, so she feels like she needs to be the keeper of the whole neighborhood. So she's like that neighbor that's always watching everybody to see what everybody's doing. She's any kind of sound, she'll kind of do this little grunt. So sometimes I feel like you might be able to hear that, but her name is Coco. So if you ever hear that, you just know it's just Coco. She's trying to be the protector of the neighborhood. Sometimes she hears like a car parking down the street, or she'll hear like I don't know, someone locking their car doors, and she's just like, alert, something's wrong. You would think that she would eventually get used to, other people living in this world with her, but she never has. She's just always high alert. Oh, if you don't have any of these silicone spatulas, they're just the best thing ever for baking. You can use them they get all of the batter out of your bowls. You can use them to smooth things. They're just like the workhorse of the kitchen. I probably should have used something, maybe plastic, for this part, because I don't know about the metal scraping. Maybe it didn't bother you. I hope not. But when I started editing this, I thought, oh, that's a little loud. It makes things really easy to use it to do this way, but I'm not sure if it works for an ASMR video. You can tell me. At this point, I was supposed to swirl everything, and I didn't, but it still worked out. Again, I think I just get in my zone and forget what I'm doing. So I'm just cleaning up here. I like to kind of clean up as I go. I am a pretty messy baker, but I do try to keep things a little bit organized at least, and try to clean up a little as I go. I don't really thrive in chaos or a chaotic environment, so I'm always trying to keep things as together, I guess, as I can. If you notice, I do all of my videos baking on my kitchen table. I have a really small kitchen, and there's a round table in the eat-in kitchen part of it, so I can just sort of lay everything out there. I don't have a lot of counter space, and some of my other baking channels that I have, I usually do it on the counter, but I like using the table because or at least for the ASMR videos, because I can just put everything on the table. I can sort of set it up and make it look nice. I like sort of that cottage vibe. So I feel like you get more of the appropriate ambience for an ASMR video this way. So I'm using my fancy coffee cups. I don't use these every day, but it's kind of nice to use the fancy china every once in a while. Are you a coffee or a tea drinker, or neither, or both? I drink both, but I don't have anything with caffeine in it. It's not a religious thing or anything. I don't like the way caffeine feels. I know a lot of people do, but I'm kind of weird that way. I don't like to feel jittery or amped up. So I just stay away from the caffeine. So we're making the topping right now, and it's just an easy glaze that it's just a powdered sugar glaze. And you can actually use this kind of glaze on anything you want, really. You can use it on some donuts or some kind of quick bread or anything like that. It's just pretty easy to make. I do the same thing when I'm measuring out the confectioner's sugar, like I just did here. So I measure it kind of the same way I do the flour. I don't actually pack it into the cup. I spoon it and level it off. And you can sift the powdered sugar if you want to get fancy about it. Most of the time I don't. I just use it how it is, unless it seems really clumpy. And if it seems clumpy, I'll sift it to remove any of the clumps. I have a few ASMR YouTubers that I like to listen to, and I generally don't listen to a lot of the talking videos, but there's one ASMR person that I will listen to her talking videos, and her voice is so soothing, and she has kind of a lower voice, or it's lower than mine is, and I wish that I could sound like her, but I don't. If you ever are interested in listening to her, it's Rebecca's Beautiful ASMR or something like that. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, she has lots of different videos, and she'll do some that have voiceovers and some that are whispered, some that don't have anything, or any talking on it. And her voice is just really nice. I'm not sure I have the voice for this, but it will be an interesting experiment. Oh, and don't feel like you can't adjust this glaze. Like when you're making glazes, you can always adjust things. Cakes are different. You really don't want to adjust those too much because they're pretty particular, with the ratios of the different ingredients. But like a glaze or an icing, you can pretty much make some small changes, and depending on how thick or thin consistency you want it. making sure I don't have any clumps here. And then I just normally just use a spoon to drizzle just a little on the cake. You could actually just pour the whole glaze over it, because it's basically, once you've spooned it on, it's basically going to cover the whole thing anyway. I think I just did this for sound effects, I guess. And feel free to use less glaze if you decide to make this and you don't want that much glaze. You can change that up as much, use as much or as little as you want. I'm one of those people that the more sugar the better, and that's just awful. That's terrible for us, I think. But I have a major sweet tooth. I wish I didn't, but I do. I always feel like I have a second small stomach, so I can eat a dinner or a lunch or whatever, and no matter how much I eat, I always have room for something sweet after it. That's weird. If you make this and you go to serve it, it's really good when it's warm like this. So even if you have to store any leftovers, just put a slice and put a slice on a plate and heat it up in the microwave and get it warm. Oh, it's so good. I hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you like the soft spoken versions, let me know, and I can try to do more of these. If you didn't, let me know that too, because I'm interested in whatever you think. I hope you have a great, wonderful, restful day or night, whatever time it is for you. And I'll leave you with me eating more of this cake and writing in my journal. And I'll see you in the next video.